What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fitness Stuff for Normal People podcast. I'm Tony.
And I'm Mariana.
And honestly, there's enough fitness podcasts. The world doesn't need another one. But that's why we're trying not to be just another fitness podcast, following trends, gatekeeping information, just directing attention away from where it really should be. The point of this show is to give you the knowledge and tools so you actually have the confidence to apply the best possible training and nutrition into your own life. Where today, you're trying to get cut for summertime and lose some extra fat, or maybe you're trying to bulk up and take down CBum to become next year's Mr. or Mrs. Olympia. We all know that your diet is responsible for whether or not you're seeing progress 90% of the time, but often it's not about getting every little thing just right. It's about not getting the big things wrong and avoiding mistakes that completely tear down everything else working for you, and that's what we're talking about today. The 5 worst dieting mistakes people make for losing fat and building muscle. Before we get to that though, if you've ever been sitting there listening to our silky smooth voices take your hand through the trenches of what is the fitness industry and thought to yourself, I wonder how I could make Tony and Mariana's life just a little bit better. Boy, do I have the answer for you. The easiest and freest way you can support us is to take the next 15 seconds to go leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening to us on. That helps push our show to more people organically and puts a fat smile on both of our faces. And if you're over on Spotify, you can even hit that little follow button on our show in the upper left corner to make sure every single Monday when we drop a new episode, it pops right up on your homepage so you don't miss a thing.
And if you want more after each episode, you can join us on Fitness Stuff Premium for just $5 a month, where you get access to all of our complete 12-week training programs. You also get access to free downloads like the high protein sweet treat recipe ebook that I just made. We also do a bonus episode every single Friday where we answer your own questions, and you get other great perks like exclusive discounts and more. You can go ahead and sign up in the show notes below. And before we jump into today's episode, as always, a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Legion Athletics. They actually have an early 4th of July sale. That's buy one, get one 50% off site-wide. You also get a free $10, $20, or $40 gift card, depending on how much you order. I'm going to be taking advantage of this. And they also just launched a straight-up creatine monohydrate supplement, which is a lot cheaper than the total recovery supplement that they included creatine in earlier. It's 60 servings for just $29.99. So you get it with the 4th of July deal going on. That means you could get 120 servings for just $44. So if you need some creatine or to up on any staples, this is the time to do it. You can also use the code FSPOD at checkout for 20% off your first order or double points on any order after that.
Surgery update. At the time this podcast comes out, I got 1 week until I can lift again. One of the craziest things that I've noticed after not being able to work out for the last 3 weeks, my appetite has disappeared.
Really?
I could wake up in the morning and I could go until noon, not even thinking about it. And even then I could go past noon, just sipping on like a coffee, maybe some water, whatever, and just go past. And I have to force myself to eat some protein at breakfast, something at lunch. It makes sense when you think about it, but to the level it disappeared is crazy to me.
That honestly, it doesn't surprise me, but I know what you mean with the shock factor, especially like thinking back to when I first started actually training, how shocked I was by how hungry I don't like to over exaggerate and be like, I'm so hungry all the time. I'm a bottomless pit, but
Yeah.
I definitely realized how much more I was eating. It's interesting going from me struggling with an eating disorder to always be thinking about when I was allowed to eat next and like always thinking about food in a way that is because of hunger and not allowing myself to eat versus training and fueling my body and being hungry in the sense that I could put back a lot of food. Like I'd be satisfied after, but the amount that I was eating, like I could handle a lot more food. And then not being able to train for a while, you're like, damn, you'll serve yourself
Oh my
the amount
gosh.
and be like, I can't eat this. Like I
was like,
can't
what?
do that.
What was I? I used to. I'd be like, what? I guess I identify as a fat freaking pig. My pronouns are diabetes. My
Big
diet
back.
is cavities. Phone rings. Oh, look at that. It's obesity. Like I used to be crazy. Is what it feels like. Anywho, I think today's episode is important because there is. I was listening to this, and I think this is every category of life, everywhere you look in your finances, in your relationships, a lot of the time it's not about focusing on getting every little thing right. It's about not getting the big things wrong,
Yeah.
avoiding mistakes. That's what Buffett, Charlie Munger, a lot of the biggest investors, they're not famous for making the best picks, like spotting the best investments in the entire world that no one else could see. They've just avoided making big mistakes for a long time. And that gets them to be the best in the world. And the same thing really happens when it comes to dieting and making progress. It's not that you can't do the right things today, tomorrow, the night, whatever. It's about avoiding the big mistakes that'll throw you off long term that leaves people in those loops.
Mhm.
The constant loop of dieting, losing weight, making progress, falling off because life gets busy, and then starting over at square one a month later, months later, a year later, whatever. And it's just that hamster wheel. Shall we get kicked off?
Mhm.
Mistake number one.
Yeah.
So we got the 5 biggest mistakes in no particular order, even though I'm sure we'll have a favorite at the end. Mistake number one that we see people make is making sudden or massive changes to their plan. Usually, losing fat and building muscle takes a long time, at least a lot longer than you think it's going to take. And the changes that happen inside of your body, so as you're losing fat, as you're building muscle, those changes on a bodily level, they have a little bit of a lag in showing up in the methods that we use to track the progress, right? We might be tracking using the scale, progress photos, our strength, things like that. Those lag a few weeks, sometimes even months behind the actual progress that's happening in your body. So you're making progress even though you can't visually see it right off the bat. And a lot of people mistake that for not making progress at all. Like you could be losing fat and gaining muscle for the first several weeks, but the scale isn't really moving at all.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean your body isn't changing. It just means that the best tools we have to measure progress don't show up on a daily basis. For example, here's how long fitness results actually take. And this is if you're doing what you need to be doing when it comes to your diet, your workouts, and your lifestyle consistently. Keyword consistently. The 1 to 2 week mark is when you'll start seeing scale progress. It'll take 3 to 4 weeks before you start seeing strength and endurance increase. 5 to 6 weeks is when you're going to start to notice that your clothes start to fit differently. But it's not until the 6 to 8 week mark, okay? It's not for at least 6 to 8 weeks of being consistent for you to just start seeing physique changes when you look in the mirror. And people get frustrated because they're not a completely different person in the mirror after a week or two and they completely change their diet, their workouts, and everything else, not realizing that them constantly changing what they're doing is the reason they're not making progress in the first place. If you haven't made it at least that long while being consistent, so not good on Monday through Thursday, going off the rails every weekend, you can't be upset with the progress you're not seeing. And you shouldn't change course because of that. I think that's the biggest thing that you see is too many people making too many changes at once because they're frustrated. Or honestly, this could even be, I want to hear your thoughts on this part, because you're not paying attention to progress or you're not measuring progress in the first place. Like I know a lot of people don't love the scale, they don't love progress photos, they don't love things like that. But if you have no data or feedback on how you're actually changing, how are you going to really be confident if what you're doing is working or not? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I I
Like how do you know?
I feel like a lot of the times these drastic changes too are not informed changes. It's just based off of where you think you should be, and you get impatient because 'cause you're not there yet. And it's like,
Oh, absolutely.
if you're only relying on that physical change, you're just setting yourself up for failure because that is something like, I don't know, you see, I remember I would sometimes have clients that would be like, think they're not seeing changes, and then they would see people that they haven't seen for a while, and
Mm,
they will just make some comment, not anything like out of pocket, just like some sort of comment on like how they're looking, if they're looking great or something, and they'll be like, "Oh, damn, like I don't even see this, but like other people are seeing it." And you go and look at pictures from like maybe 6 months back and you're like, "Oh, okay." Like that, it's like trusting the process type of thing, but also making sure you have, again, like you said, data points that can almost validate you that even though a lot of the days you're gonna feel like nothing is changing, like it is.
yeah.
And
Because if you're just relying on the mirror, how much does your mental space even like you could have a bad night's sleep and just be in, everyone goes down like a little mental rabbit hole.
yeah.
We know that, and it's not even body dysmorphia that everyone goes through.
Just being
There are
human.
just days that if you have a significant other, you know this, where you'll look at them and you'll be like, "You look fantastic. You look exactly like you did the last week, year of my entire life." But in their head, they're like, "Oh, I look like crap. My hair looks bad. My this looks bad." It's like, it doesn't, but in your head, it does. So all it takes is one of those bad days if you're not really tracking or measuring your progress and you're like, "Everything I've been doing, the plan I've been sticking to, whatever that is, isn't working."
Mhm.
When it really is. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, that's all it really takes to throw you off.
Mhm.
And that's a bad and that's I mean, not even just to start things off, but when people hit a plateau where they're stuck for, I don't know, a week, it's like, no, you can't just be stuck for a week. That's not a real plateau. A plateau is when you've been doing what you've been doing consistently for 3 to 4 weeks and no measure of progress is changing. You're not
Yeah.
getting stronger, you're not changing weight, your composition hasn't changed. That's when you can see, okay, a true plateau where we might need to change things.
Mhm. Yeah.
But too many people rush to massive changes, doing the 75 hard where you're changing 10 different aspects at one time instead of just making 1 or 2 small changes and seeing how that works out.
Yeah.
It just it work does not work 99% of the time.
Yeah. Personally think the most important factor of getting results besides the actual type of diet you're following and what you're eating and whether or not it's in line with your goals is being consistent with it. Like consistency with everything,
Yeah.
but also with diet. And you see it time and time again, like people don't give themselves time to be consistent because they're always hopping on the next best trendy diet, or they'll see someone that they want to look like and they're eating a certain way. So they'll go try that. Or it's just not working fast enough what they're doing and they're putting all this work into it and they feel like they're not getting success. So they stop what they're doing and completely change course. And it that is the worst thing you could do because then you're just never being consistent with anything. And consistency breeds habit, and habit formation takes time. And you need to build these habits in order to get results. So
Yeah.
it's just something that
And it's the too many things at once that's if you can make a habit, if you focus on one thing to be a habit,
Mhm.
you can make that one thing happen. But if you're trying to start 10 new changes and start 10 new habits at once, what are the freaking odds that those are going to stick? Or what are the odds that all of those are going to overwhelm you and then ultimately end in you collapsing and none of them sticking?
Yeah.
Where if you just went with one habit, adding a 10-minute walk after each meal of the day, that'll be a habit by the end of the freaking week. A lot of the things that are working for you, you just convince yourself it's not. If you would have just waited, it would have kept working for you.
Yeah.
But you throw out the window what's working to bring in something else that's not going to work. And you're just confused. You're like, what the is happening?
Mhm.
Which I mean, I get the too much at a time as a dude. I mean, I feel like every dude thinks they're Superman at the end of the day, indestructible, can't kill me kind of a thing. So more is better, right? If you're
Mhm.
going to attack a goal, why not do it the best you freaking can? But you got to check your ego because that'll be one thing that punches you in the face
Yeah.
and ruins your entire push. So that's mistake number one, changing things too much. And that's with honestly, this is talking about diet, but you also see that in training too.
Yeah.
Different workouts, different splits, different routines, just constantly changing things every month and not sticking with something. It's kind of everywhere.
Mhm.
What's number two?
Number 2 is focusing too much on the little details. This one's my personal I get all amped up about this one because I see this so much, always, all the time. People get so caught up and spend so much time and energy focusing on these little nuances when it comes to their diet, and it completely takes away from the most important factors that are actually gonna give them the success they're looking for, and it drives me insane. It's not like I'm, like, judging these people or get mad at them, like, I'm actually empathetic because it is so hard to avoid on social media nowadays. It's what people are
We all
flush
do it
with.
too in every aspect of life.
Yeah, yeah. So, I feel like that is one that this one in particular, I think is like a universal experience that someone has taken part in at least once on their journey in, like, improving their diet, training, whatnot, and it really bites
We're
my
even
teeth.
guilty of it. I feel like sometimes on this show, when we get a little excited about something, I'm like, I feel like we've probably, I can't think of a specific example, but I'm like, there's no way in the last hundred and something episodes, we haven't got a little too excited on something very small
Mhm.
and ignored something big.
Yeah.
But I think we're good at not ignoring the big things, but everyone's guilty of it.
Yeah. So, for example, take these really big rocks, say you're trying to lose fat. These really big rocks. The first one in diet, from a diet standpoint, total calories. Got to be in a deficit. Well, I mean, sound like a broken record, but that's true. If you're not, like anything else you're worrying about does not matter. Nothing is going to happen if you are not in a deficit. That's the truth. Another big rock I think about is protein intake. It's going to help you be in that deficit. It's also going to help you hold on to lean muscle mass. And then I also think about fiber, could be another dietary big rock. That's just important for your overall health, but it's also going to help with satisfaction and satiation after meals. And if you are focusing on those three bigger components, other positive, smaller dietary habits are going to naturally fall into place, and you don't have to worry and stress about them. And you don't have to worry and stress about these little details because, for example, eating more fiber, that's going to help you get more nutrient dense foods. That's going to help you eat more vegetables, more whole grains, more whole foods in general. If you're eating more whole foods in general, you're going to be eating a little less processed foods. Just being cognizant of your calorie and protein intake can help you choose foods that are going to be more nutrient dense, not as calorie dense. So maybe you're going to choose less processed foods. You're going to cook more meals at home. You're going to be doing things from a dietary standpoint that are just better for your health without having to stress about all these little tiny details versus worrying about whether or not your oat milk has inflammatory seed oils in it. How is that in any way going to help you lose fat? It's not, but it's
Yeah,
going
it's
to.
putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah,
You're worrying about the little things before.
yeah.
I love the analogy almost of if you're trying to become rich, and you've like two options. Like, how do you think you're going to become rich or wealthy? You could go spend hours a day looking for pennies on the street, or you could just have an automation set up putting 5 to 10% of every paycheck into an index fund investment that'll compound over the next couple decades. That'll take zero effort. That's the big thing that matters: compound interest, saving, investing over time, instead of chasing around all these little pennies on the freaking street and being like, why am I not rich? My bank account's barely going up. It's where people, it's the seed oil, it's the insulin, it's the small things that aren't total calorie intake, aren't total protein intake, fiber, and maybe even, I would say, like resistance training and just a total. So to make sure you're losing fat, not muscle. But why people will be frustrated because they'll be eating as quote unquote clean as possible, spending all this money going buying organic, and then frustrated when they're not losing weight or making progress. It's like health and like eating for health and eating for weight loss and muscle gain. Those are overlapping, but they're different things. And people get so frustrated. It's like, I'm putting all this effort in. I'm making sure not to spike my insulin because I'm having this low glycemic food at this time of day. And I'm making sure not to match this carb with that carb. Why am I not losing weight? Because that's not the thing that matters for weight loss. That's not the thing that matters. You know what I'm saying? That's where people get frustrated.
You know what is actually, I'm just thinking about this now, that's actually pissing me off. I thought, at least with Ozempic, I have my thoughts on Ozempic. That doesn't matter right now. I thought we could have gotten one really positive out of it, and that being people realizing it is a matter of eating less. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It is a matter of the fact that these people are now able to eliminate hunger and just eat less food. Doesn't
That's what
matter
I
what
loved
else.
about it's, oh, your metabolism wasn't broken. You were just truly eating too much food because as soon as you stopped eating so much food, you lost weight.
And
I love that example.
that has not happened. That has
Nope.
not happened. And that is pissing. I'm like, no one's holding on to that factor. If anything, they're like, I was seeing comments the other day on someone's Ozempic weight loss transformation and whatnot, how it is their brain had too much food noise and they just could never change how their brain is wired to think about food. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not what Ozempic is targeting. It is making you eat less because your hunger is shot.
You're right, that could be. Maybe who knows? Maybe a year from now, people will finally start to be like, "Oh, wait a second. It was really just that easy." I mean, not easy, but
Yeah, it doesn't
go on
mean it's
that
easy.
medication.
It's harder for some people, but I thought that that would be the one thing that we would it's like, "Oh, this is proof enough that all that little doesn't matter." Really doesn't matter. But
Yeah. And you because it helps people when you look at it in other angles of life, like the saving money analogy, or if you're creating content online for social media. Like you and I know if you want to go viral, if you want to grow a brand, it's like spending as much money on you can, getting the nicest equipment and the nicest camera and the nicest microphone. It's like that doesn't really matter if you're not telling a good story, if you're not putting out quality,
yeah.
none of that matters. Like quality is the number one thing. If no one's getting anything, any sort of value from you, Why would they watch your video? It doesn't matter if you shoot on a freaking $8,000 movie stage camera.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if the value's not there. Same thing here, same thing everywhere else. And it's easy today because that is where grabs attention on social media. And what we talked about last week with avoiding certain people who are pushing certain things.
Yeah.
But it's this focus on all these small little things. And like we kind of have that tier list. Like it really does come down to like calories, protein, fiber's a big rock. When it comes to gaining muscle, like progressive overload in the gym, eating enough total food and total protein, everything else is just sprinkles on top. Like those three things will make up 90+% of your progress.
Yeah.
90+%. Blows my freaking mind. What is it? There's a lot of terms for that. Majoring in the minors, missing the forest for the trees. There's a lot of those.
You know all of these little sayings. I don't. I don't know any of them. Try to throw one of those like sayings out. I say it wrong. I'm like, what is
Putting the horse
in your
into the
mouth?
cart. Yeah. Put the horse into your mouth. Where's the cart? That
Uh,
makes sense. That makes sense. Mistake number 3. That leads us into. And it's gonna have a little overlap, but thinking in black and white terms only.
mm,
Mistake number 3 is thinking in black and white. This is a little bit overlapping with the last one, but more talking about how easy it is to self-label every different thing, food, workout, whatever, as good or bad, right? And the media has shifted over the freaking decades, right? From fats are bad to now carbs are bad to wait, carbs are okay, but sugar is now bad. It's this constant shift. And I promise you, right now it's seed oils or insulin or whatever. In 10 years, I would bet my life savings that it's not the devil anymore because that's how it always works. Learn from history. It usually repeats itself. Reality, there is so many shades of gray to all of these statements. Everything when it comes to your diet, your health, there are countless shades of gray.
mhm.
And we know that all of these things can be bad if they're leading to excessive fat gain or displacing other nutrients in your diet, but none of them are really bad in a vacuum. And that's the most important thing to understand. So for health, instead of trying to pick this exclusive diet, create a more inclusive diet. Don't be black and white saying this is bad, this is good. I'm going to eat the good, cut out the bad, right? Prioritize certain nutrients, focus on the good stuff, and don't see things as black as white. Don't cut out the bad, the dirty, the whatever.
Yeah.
It just improves adherence. It makes your progress last.
Yeah. Tony and we have a new segment we're doing on FS Premium called FS Confidential. Where we are actually going through videos you guys have tagged us in that are a little bit more controversial. We're saying more of our unfiltered opinion on what is trending right now, what a lot of people are talking about. And for what we just posted last week, the whole completely eliminating sugar, completely eliminating processed food, I didn't realize how much that has resurfaced. It's all the same messaging and just all of this black and white thinking. It never goes away. And I hate it.
Yeah. Black and white. Can't live like that.
It's just impossible for nutrition to be defined as black and white. It's not good or bad. It's not clean or dirty. It's not all or nothing. And my biggest problem with this too is that this way of thinking leads to so much rigidity and leaves no room for flexibility, because when you are thinking in terms of black and white phenomenons, you are thinking in extremes. In the field of psychology, it's called dichotomous or polarized thinking. And it's cognitive distortion because it keeps us from seeing the world as it often is, which is complex, nuanced, and full of shades of gray, all the in between. And so that this can happen in so many aspects of life, like Tony has talked about. But in nutrition, it really, really can promote an unhealthy relationship with food. In our episode, we talked about how to improve your relationship with food. We specifically mentioned do not think in terms of black and white labels when it comes to your diet. It also can really promote like disordered eating behaviors, a lot of restriction, binge restrict cycle. It can trickle into how you view your body. If you're viewing your body black and white, like some days you just absolutely hate the way you look or you really, really like it, you don't have that common ground. That's not great for your body image. And so it just can have this ripple effect if over time you're constantly promoting this dichotomous way of thinking in nutrition. And it can be a big hole to dig yourself out of. I know I used to struggle with it so much when I did not have a good relationship with food. And it's honestly scary because this thought process brings about so much food anxiety too, that you just are worried all the time about what you're eating because it does not fall into your strict rules. And that is just never, it's just something that so many people fall into, but I feel so much for people who do, because if you feel really stuck and you feel very afraid of, like, genuinely what you're putting into your body makes you very, very anxious when it has no reason to. And it makes it very hard to get any, like, to achieve your goals in the long run.
Yeah, well, and it's not even just the psychological or mental state, it's the logical side too. It logically doesn't make sense because a lot of people will justify the negatives that it brings onto your mental or headspace and that negative relationship with us like, well, but it's true. This is bad. This is good. It's like, no, logically, it is not true.
Yeah.
That like they're missing that whole point, Because I think I don't know about you, but that's how I hear a lot of people justify it. They're like, I know it's bad for my mental health, but it's because this is true.
Yeah.
This X, Y, or Z is causing cancer, is killing me, is bad. I can't. It's like, no, it's not. Like logically, it is not. You're telling yourself that to feed that habit, to feed that negative
And
pit you're stuck
it was like, it's so crazy to me to think about now because I hated doing this in the beginning. I just thought it was the most annoying thing. But a lot of my cognitive behavioral therapy for my eating disorder was having to talk myself out of that mindset. Because I genuinely believed something was so bad. In my head, I would have to continuously repeat, this is not going to make me gain weight. This is not going to give me this disease. Like constantly, constantly,
Yeah.
constantly to retrain that thought pattern that was completely false and incorrect. And I knew that on the surface, but I didn't believe it. So I literally had to repeat like what was
Like trick
true
yourself.
until I believed it. And it in the beginning, I freaking hated it, but it was such an important part of my, I don't even like to call it recovery, but that's what it was in my therapy, because I had to undo a lot of those thoughts that were just,
Yeah. It feels like you're lying to yourself, doesn't it?
yeah.
Like it feels like when you're saying that, you're like, I don't believe this,
Yeah.
but I gotta keep freaking telling
Yeah.
myself. That's the worst. If you got like imposter syndrome or anything else like that, like it feels like you are lying to yourself, but you have to do it
Yeah.
to get your brain to kind of get tricked out
Yeah.
of that. That is funny. But yeah, that it kind of overlaps with number two, but that's big mistake number three. What's number four?
Number 4 is not tracking your food for a period of time. So, and I even think like a period of time, maybe you used to do it, you fall off, whatever, or just like thinking you don't have to do it in general, like sometimes is going to really bite you in the ass. And like you absolutely do not have to track your food to make progress, okay? There are some people that actually like tracking is could be a very big trigger. It's not good for your relationship with food. Totally completely recognize that. So if anyone's going to freak out about that, just get that out of the way. But for a lot of people, not tracking at all and thinking that you don't really need to track at all, you are losing one of the most important and productive pieces of data when it comes to your success in losing fat or building muscle. And because so many people don't look at tracking as just a piece of data, they let it hold so much weight into whether or not they have been
Yeah.
successful or not. That is not what it is. It is there to help you make informed decisions and help direct you on where to go. When you aren't tracking, it is very difficult to pinpoint why you aren't making progress. If and when that time comes, because that time will come if it hasn't yet. That's a part of this. That's
Yeah.
just a part of it.
You can't make progress without a
Yeah.
plateau.
Yeah. It allows you to go back and see trends over time, maybe some dietary habits that you're like, oh, I've thought it's been fine, but I've been consistently eating like 200 calories over every single day for the past month. And at the time, I thought that that wasn't that big of a deal because it's just 200 calories. But because it has been this past month, it's why I'm kind of plateauing. Okay, I can see that. Let's make a change there. It can give you specific direction and a goal to work towards. Maybe you've been eating out a lot more and you have noticed that. You've been ordering takeout a lot more and you've noticed that. Okay, I'm going to cook more meals at home. Maybe your protein intake has, again, you've just been making these small changes of, oh, I'm under my protein today, but it's fine. It's just today. It allows you to see these trends over time. That it's funny because we will trick our brains into thinking it's fine. Like we can be like, oh, it's just a little bit under, or I'm just a little bit over. And on that day, it's not a big deal. But once you actually take a second to look back and reflect on a whole month or 2 months, you're like, oh, no, this, I got to check myself because it has over time, this has bit me in the ass. And that's all it is. It's just data. It's just there to help you. And when you don't have any of that data, you're just playing a guessing game. And because there are so many factors involved with, whether or not you're losing fat, building muscle, there are things you can look at like, oh, my sleep, my training, all important as well. But diet is where you want to look towards first because it is going to be the most influential at the end of the day. Yeah, sorry. I just went
Yeah.
on a rant there.
Well, that's where we started the whole episode. A lot of different things matter. Your training frequency and intensity
Yeah.
matters. Your programming matters. Your diet is the one block that will determine whether or not you're moving forward.
Yeah.
It's the first thing. If that's not there, you cannot make progress anywhere else. If your training's not there, you can still lose weight, you can still lose fat.
Mhm.
It'll be hard to build muscle if your training's not there, but you can still do it.
Mhm.
You cannot make progress if your diet is not directly pointing at where you want to go. And that's why I think the wording in this was important, not tracking food for a period of time. Because should you track food forever?
No.
In my opinion, absolutely not. Like, I really don't think anybody
No.
should. But why would you ignore the data that is the number one thing responsible for whether or not you're making progress?
Mhm.
And if you're not making progress, you probably know exactly where it's coming from. You just refuse to look at it. That's
Mhm.
really what it is.
Yeah.
And even then, like, this is the crazy part to me, even just for a short period of time, if people don't have a fat loss goal, a muscle building goal, if they don't give a crap about their composition, how they look, I still think that everyone going through a 3 to 6 month period while you are diligently tracking your food intake, not just your calorie, but your food intake so you can see what's coming in, while also track how your body's responding, that it can teach you more about nutrition than any book, any online course, any certification. I think it will teach you so much more just doing that because you're getting constant feedback loops and you're seeing it. You're not just you're going through it. It's the whole skin in the game theory.
Mhm.
How you learn, you hear from business people all the time. They learned more in their first 6 months of starting their own business than they did in 6 years of business school and then getting their MBA. Because going through the trenches, doing it, teaches you. It has these feedback loops. We know the country of Brazil, they're good at soccer, right? They have been for a long time. Like World Cup, they're always up there. You probably even know this, right?
Yes.
Oh, I'm like, you're detached from sports, but yeah, okay.
No, yeah, they're
I'll
good
fill
at
you in then.
football. Football.
Brazil, you're right. That's why, because I was calling it soccer. You refer to it as football. That's my bad. That's my bad. But when you look at Brazil and say, okay, there's a reason for everything. Well, why are they good at football? Like, why are so many Brazilians, they grow up and they become great soccer or football players? And when you look at different ideas of why that might be, one thing really pokes out in Brazil, and that there's so many Brazilian children that want to play soccer. So, in order to compensate so everyone can play, they need a lot more fields. And in that case, they end up shrinking the field. So, they have much smaller fields to play the same game on. And although you might initially see this as a bad thing, you realize that one thing happens when you play the same game on a smaller, more confined space. It massively increases the amount of learning cycles they get.
Mhm.
How often they're shooting, the more passes, the more saves. In a typical soccer game, a midfielder might average 30 to 40 passes, maybe 1 to 2 shots on goal. Where if you shrink the field down, you're getting hundreds of passes, countless shots. Yeah, it's immediate feedback that teaches you to be better.
Yeah.
And that's where I think even if you're not trying to lose fat, if you're not trying to gain muscle, tracking food teaches you because you're seeing it in real life and how it's impacting your body.
Yeah.
And especially the example you gave with the 200 extra calories a day is it holds you accountable for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
I even say I'll track my food in periods, but the only periods I really track it are when I'm transitioning into a cut, a build, or a maintenance, just so I can watch my progress for that month and confirm that, okay, what I'm eating now put me in a deficit. What I'm eating now put me in a surplus. What I'm eating now put me at maintenance. I saw that, okay, I don't have to track anymore because I know what I'm eating
Yeah.
is doing that for me. It's insane how much people can underestimate how many calories they're eating, even when they're brand new to tracking. Like the famous study from the researchers at Columbia University College, they tested this, where they asked people to track their food or report their calorie intake each day for 2 straight weeks. While they did this, the researchers also tracked their intake to get an accurate look at how much food, how many calories they were taking in, just to see how closely the numbers matched. At the end of the study, these subjects reported that they ate between about 800 and 1,200 calories per day. These were all also obese individuals, so they weren't losing weight and they were frustrated with this. They were only reporting 800 to 1,200 calories a day. So obviously, you would be frustrated. You hear that a calorie deficit is how you lose weight. You're like, there's no way I'm not in a calorie deficit. Something must be wrong with me. But the researchers found something different. They found the subjects unknowingly underreported their intake by as much as 2,000 calories per day. So some of these people thought they were eating 1,200. In reality, they were eating over 3,000 calories. 3,000. And not only this, but they also overreported their calorie burn through exercise and through the rest of the day, which led to more confusion. But if you're not going through, and I even am a big fan because I know what you're saying, not everyone's in a space where they should track mentally.
Yeah.
It can be controlling, consuming. It's not always a good thing. But if you don't go through a period where you're weighing your food on a food scale, right? Not just eyeballing it, because we know serving sizes people suck with when they're tested with it, but measuring things out, checking yourself, holding yourself accountable. You can't be mad if you're not making progress if you don't know that one thing. It's like getting mad that you're not saving money when you haven't looked at your finances in
I
months.
just
Like, why is my savings not going up? It's like, oh, how much do you put in? I don't know.
It's
Like,
that is like I think the financial what is it? Analogy is so can be so
yeah.
helpful, and I always like to talk about it because I personally, especially before I started working for myself, I am so bad with money. Like, I've gotten so much better, but I used to be absolutely terrible, and my spending habits were so irresponsible because I would have this habit of if it's under $100, I didn't spend any money, which logically, does that make sense? Absolutely not. I know that, but
Girl math.
in my head,
Yeah.
it's under $100, that doesn't count. Like, who cares? It's under $100, that's fine. That was such a bad habit. I was aware it was a bad habit, and you can make that analogy to calories. Oh, it's like barely anything. I'm gonna eat it. It's fine. Over time, no, that's not fine. Until I started tracking my spending, I kept track of it, but like really diligently, had a time every week where I would look back and think
Mhm.
that is the only thing because I know in my head that is a bad habit I have and always will have if I'm not monitoring it. I will always lean back into that bad habit of throwing out money, even if it's $90, it's not 100, I'm going to buy it type of thing. I know I will fall back into that if I'm not checking myself every single
Yeah.
week. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much I know it's not a logical thing to do and how much I know it's not, I'll ignore it. I will ignore it if I'm not aware of it. And tracking will make you aware of these little things that you're doing. Because on the surface, you might acknowledge it, but then you ignore it and then you move on. And it's just it's like a human, I don't know.
Yeah. And
You feel
everyone
it.
gets that analogy because it truly is just numbers and data.
Yeah.
But then for some reason, when it comes to food and calories, they attach all this feeling and emotion to it. It's like, no, it's the same. It's data.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's numbers and it's data. Like that analogy, someone being frustrated with their saving account not going up, and then you just asking them, well, how much do you put in every month? And their answer is, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
That doesn't shock anyone. They're like, obviously, that person's savings isn't going to grow.
Yeah.
Why is that not the same exact thing?
Mhm.
I'm not losing weight. Well, how much are you putting in your body? I don't know. No clue.
Well,
Well, start there. Like, start
yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the first problem.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And that's where I like a lot of people go down the path. And I don't think tracking is a forever thing. I
No.
also don't think every single person is in a good mindset for that, or honestly, even needs to from time to time. Like, if you're healthy, if you're not trying to lose weight, if you're like, why would you need to? You don't.
I maybe track like once or twice a year, and it's typically in the winter. Unless if I had like a very specific goal, which I just
Yeah.
like, I'm happy with where I'm at. But it's typically in the winter when I'm just like less active in my day to day. And it's the winter, it gets dark early. I snack a little bit more, whatever. I will notice myself just like feeling a little softer. And I'm like, you know what? I need to check myself. Let's track for like 2 weeks, see where I'm at. Then after those 2 weeks, make a small change, track again for another 2 weeks and see how that's helping. I get back, I hate saying get back on track, but I get back into eating at a level that is
Yeah.
I'm not overeating anymore. I was just overeating a little bit and now I'm not, and I'm going back after that month I don't track again. A lot of people will say, "Oh, well you used to have an eating disorder, like that's so bad you should never." That's honestly, I cannot think of a healthier way to look at Chronometer in my Fitness Pal. It's like it's
Yeah, right?
yeah, but
Actually, though.
that's just my opinion, but I'm also so emotionally detached from tracking that it's simply just to help me out. It's simply just numbers to help me out. It means absolutely nothing in terms
Yeah.
of my mental health or well-being. So,
Yeah. 'Cause you're even a good point, though. I've tracked on and off for probably the last 10 to 12 years, some periods going through longer.
yeah.
Now, like I'm with you a couple times a year, or if I'm changing a specific goal.
Mhm.
And sometimes if I'm not changing goals, I'll just do it for even a week to hold myself accountable because I've been doing this
Mhm.
for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But what you notice is every time you try to track, you're like, oh, I was overestimating or underestimating by a big, as much as I've been doing it for 10 years. And I still think I could be getting it right. But when I check myself, I'm like, oh, I was way
Yeah.
off over here. I was a little bit off here, but I was way off over here.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of people that'll be like, no, I tracked for years before years ago. I know my portion sizes. It's like, okay, prove it. Like, just, you know what I'm saying? Like, if, again, you don't need to prove it if you're not making progress, but if you're not making progress, we know nutrition is probably the reason.
Yeah.
Prove it to yourself sometimes by doing that. Prove it to yourself.
Yeah. For me, it's always the same thing too. Is it, like, similar for you that you fall into like, for me, it's always thinking I'm eating more protein than I'm actually am, but I'm not even
It is a little bit,
I'm
yeah,
I'm
it is.
typically
That's a big
not,
one.
and when I don't eat enough protein, I eat so many more carbs, which, like, it's not the carbs are it's just the carbs are a lot more I eat more calories, and that it's always that for me. For the past, like, 3, 4 years, it has always been that same thing, and so I know, but I need to attach the numbers so that I can nail it down. I know what I need to do,
For
but I don't know how much, if that makes sense.
for me, it's that, and oh, I go hard on underestimating how many calories I eat through snacks, like little things just throughout the day that I'll pick on,
Mhm.
the little chocolates or little candy. Like I'll keep like little snacks in my house, and I just so under. That's what gets me every time. Is I'll be like, holy crap, I was eating. It's not hard. Like I've caught myself before eating 1,000 extra calories than I thought because it was just through extra little small things
Yeah.
through the day.
Yeah.
1,000 calories
It's
that
easy
added up
to
through the day.
do, yo.
And
It which is
because
so
people
annoying.
don't realize that.
It's so annoying.
People will track and they won't track the little like, oh, I just go I have a little mini candy, like one of those mini bags of M&Ms left over from my kids' Halloween. I'll do this and that. And they don't realize it can add up not just, oh, it was probably like 50. Because I'll ask people if I'm working with clients and I'll ask them, say, it probably adds up to 50, maybe 100 calories, maybe, but I'll just undereat a little bit. And then when you track it, you're like, holy crap. I didn't realize I ate like 8 of those mini packs of M&Ms, which is the equivalent of 2 freaking bags of M&Ms.
But in the back of your head,
And
you
now I'm
do
over by
know.
800
In the
calories.
back of your head, you do know, and that's why I like this because it's like
Yeah.
you know what you're doing, but you don't wanna know. It's like with my spending habit, it's like you know, but you don't wanna face it type of thing.
I think you do know, but I don't think you really do know how bad
It's
it
not like that you're
is.
not in the
Like, I
yeah,
think you're like, I know I'm not looking over there, but I still don't think your brain's like, "Oh, I know I'm majorly effing up over
yeah,
here." You know what I'm saying? I think you know it's bad, but you don't know how
yeah,
bad. That's
yeah.
the that gets scary. Yeah, if you're one of those people that doesn't track your snacks, doesn't track that's why for, like, the couple months that you're doing it legitimate, track everything that goes in your
Yeah.
mouth. "Oh, it's just a couple chips." Track it.
It's
It's just a
it's not
track it.
fun,
Like, it's
but it's just it's gotta do it. Like
no, it's annoying as hell. Like, go into it, it's annoying, it's tedious, it only takes a few minutes, but it's stupid, but you gotta do it
yeah.
sometimes. Which gives us up to mistake number 5, and we got a little bonus after this one too, just a quick little bonus one that we wanna throw in, but mistake number 5 is thinking faster, not longer. Faster, not longer. And this is one of my core values in life, so this is one that I was really happy we got to put on here. I really, really, really think that any significant return you're going to get in life, whether it's with wealth, your relationships, your knowledge, your health, your business, anything comes from compound interest. Every significant return comes from that. Significant, life changing return comes from compound interest. Yes, you will lose more weight in the next 2 weeks if you cut your calories in half and spend an hour on the Stairmaster each day than if you cut maybe 300 to 500 calories out each day and added in a couple extra thousand steps, like a little 10-minute walk after each meal. Yeah, you'd lose a lot more weight in the next 2 weeks if you did option A. But where do you think you'll be a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months, a year from now? Don't be an idiot. So many people are chasing this little short little feedback. Oh, I want to feel good now. I want this now. I'll just start with this aggressive short-term thinking just to kind of kickstart my weight loss, to kickstart my progress. That's something that every single person, if you haven't said that to yourself, you're a liar. If you're listening to that right now, every aspect of life, name me a single time that short-term thinking or action will pay off more than long-term action. Anything. If that's in dating and you're going off and you're just getting distracted by the new flashy thing,
Hmm.
that won't end up well, right? Like it's a rule in my life, and I viciously ignore short-term distractions because every single time that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a distraction. Like you don't need to kickstart it. You don't need to do this. It doesn't matter if you have a wedding in 3 months or if summer's in 60 days on your spring break trip. I've talked to clients, I've talked to people every single time that they've chosen the short-term actions, the aggressive, the restrictive, the craziness, even if it's they got a wedding and whatever. 98% of the time, this is not exaggerating, people who decide to try that, one, they fail at it. It doesn't work. And then two, end up making less progress in that short amount of time just because they end up rebounding back to where they were or before that, then even if they just took the little bit amount of progress that they could make in that short period of time by doing the sustainable thing, the long-term action.
Yeah.
Like just be honest with yourself. It's not going to kickstart your progress. That's the biggest lie that you could tell yourself.
Yeah, and I've what I've found with people making all of these, like, short-term drastic changes in their diet to lose weight, I also find it's a lack of confidence in your decision making as well. You're constantly second guessing what you are doing. When you are sure and confident that in a decision you make, you're not gonna let these outside influences tell you that you should steer away from that to go chase something else. I find that a lot in my career, especially being self-employed. The amount of people that have told me what I'm doing is not safe, it's not secure, in the long term, it's not going to work out. I should do XYZ instead to secure my financial stability and career, whatnot. I always have to remind myself that I am confident in this decision I have made. I am not going to steer my course because someone else told me to, or because I'm going to make this much money quicker. No, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to keep going. And I find that with diet all the time. You get into this constant feedback loop of trying new things based off of what someone else is telling you to do or what is going to get you
Mhm.
results fast. And all of a sudden, you're in this failure loop because you're never allowing yourself to be successful in the first place because you're not playing the long game. So you're constantly now making decisions based off of what other people are telling you, but also because you are failing on at whatever you're doing. This crash diet that you tried worked for a little bit and then it failed. And that failure is going to propel you to do something new. And that is the worst thing you can do because it's just nothing is coming from like internal intrinsic motivation. And I feel like it's
Yeah.
just
You see that all the time with creators on social media, for that analogy too, is the people who are selling out with a new sponsorship, a new scammy product, selling something new every week, like just kind of like offering whatever comes up that week. It's a cash grab. They will make a lot more money today, this week, this month if they do that.
yeah.
I see this with a lot of coaching people who have their own coaching businesses. They turn their profile into something where they are selling their coaching. Apply for my coaching, apply for my coaching, apply for my coaching. Buy this new clothes every single day. And it turns into an ad for people. So, yeah, they might have spiked their income for a couple months, but a year from now, they're screwed because no one's paying attention to them because they're an ad. They're a walking ad and no one pays attention to ads.
Yeah.
Well, why'd people stop? Because all you're trying to do is get something from someone else. It's the same thing with creators. Like I think even the D'Amelios who are just taking like random brand deals and now they're losing their relevance. They were the most relevant thing in the world for a minute. And now no one knows where they are paying attention to it because
You know what?
they're
This
trying to do
is
whatever's quick instead of building something long
I
term.
love that you brought them up because I've always been a Charlie D'Amelio stan. And like recently I've been noticing like she just completely disappeared. And like I just loved her. I thought she was so much fun. She danced like I don't know,
Yeah.
I loved it. Recently I was thinking, I was like, I never see this girl ever anymore. And this past month, she has been coming up on my For You page so much more, just doing her fun dances again because and they haven't been ads. And I'm like, yo, I missed that. This is like back from when she was just like
Yeah,
a
because it's not
dancer.
selling something every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not selling something every single time. Or it's even which is like not even authentic to them. Like, I know people hate on the Kardashians. Is it Kylie with the lip kit?
Yeah. Yeah. She has the lip thing.
Is that the
Yeah.
one? It's like, I at least applaud her for that because that's very
The
on
brand.
brand for
Yeah.
her. The makeup beauty thing. She didn't launch a random product, a random thing that makes no sense. Like, oh, here's a clothing line. I have nothing to do with clothes or fashion. It's all makeup.
Well,
Like it's aligned with the
yeah.
brand. Where if you're, I think the D'Amelios did like a random clothing deal, and then a random
Yeah.
product, and it's like, what? Like, what do you
Well,
guys?
when
You're about fun dances.
Charlie
Like, what are you
D'Amelio
doing?
was always obsessed with Dunkin' Donuts. She always had Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and I remember when she did her first collab and partnership with them and got her own drink, it made so much
Oh,
fucking
probably
sense,
huge.
and it was so good. She still does it to this day. But then they start doing all this other that makes no it's like there's a way you can really do that and be so I mean, you have an audience enough, like, why do you need to try all these random things that make absolutely no sense? And that doesn't make
Exactly.
sense to sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent. That doesn't make sense to me with famous influencers. You could do any partnership you want. There's not a short there's why wouldn't you do something that is on brand that like I just don't get it.
Because it's the short term thinking. It's what will pay me the most right now.
Yeah.
It's not what could I build in the future. It's not if we partnered with a different supplement company than Legion, initially we could have made more money
Yeah.
by a lot. We could have initially made a lot more money selling out to whatever dozen other supplement companies we could have partnered with. But we aligned with their brand. We're going to stay consistent. And that was something we got from them too. And we know that's where we've gotten to them now as a great partner in our show.
Mhm.
Same thing how you like it's everything.
Yeah.
Your relationships, your business. You're not going to win doing short-term thinking. Nothing.
Yeah.
Especially so that's I know that's a hard one for people to get. 'Cause it's like, oh well, any excuse will pop up. Oh, well, just for my wedding in 3 months. Oh, just for this in a couple weeks. Oh, just for the no. Like every time you catch yourself saying that, tell yourself to shut up. Say, shut up, stop it. You're lying to yourself. And then do the right thing, which is the slow, the small, tedious, annoying thing. That's the fifth freaking mistake. That might be my biggest one of the day.
Mm.
What's the bonus though? Because we had to throw this bonus mistake in here that people make all the time.
Too much on supplements. Supplements, oh, this happens all the time. They're not the end all be all. We just talked this whole time about we're talking about diet. It is the most influential factor in you losing fat and building muscle. It is. You cannot outdo a shitty diet with supplements. You simply can't. People think that these supplements are the answer. And just because you're taking a greens powder now, oh, you don't have to eat your vegetables. Or just because you're taking creatine now, you're going to build all this muscle. So you don't have to worry too much about how you're performing in the gym or how, what have
Mm.
you. I mean, we just were talking about Legion and how they sell supplements. We love their company. And there are supplements that are going to be super, super helpful that we have mentioned before. They're not the answer. And that's also another reason why we love Legion because they don't have that value system of this is the answer to all of your problems, all of your weight problems, dietary problems. No, it's supplemental. It's a small part.
Because even if I make a video on social media about a supplement, and even if I talk about it in a nuanced way, speaking about it like this, it'll get usually on average more traction, more views than talking about something else.
Yeah.
Like supplements are just people are drawn to them a little bit, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's the whole, even when I do, I just notice this when I do a Friday Q&A every Friday on my Instagram, and I'll get a couple, I mean, a little over 1,000, I think, questions each time doing them. And I would say at least half is something along the lines of what supplement can I take to help with recovery? What supplement can I take with my gut health or my bloating? What supplement can I take for this? And I'll answer it every single time. What's the best supplement for recovery? A 5 to 10 minute mobility drill
Hmm.
every day before your workout. What's the best supplement you could take for bloating? Walking after each meal, eating enough fiber, drinking water, the small things in your lifestyle. A supplement's never going to fix something.
No.
Never, ever, ever in a million, billion years. Yes, the right ones can help. None of them will replace. And it's easy to get caught in that.
Hmm.
It will do so little with your progress at the end of the day. I answered this the other day on my Q&A on someone asked if I have all my clients take creatine. And I'm like, I don't even talk to my clients about supplements other than a protein powder if it helps get their goal for the first 3 months until they've been consistent with their training and diet, because it just, it totally miscues how important supplements are. Nothing in comparison to your training, your diet, your lifestyle. Nothing.
Y
Grains of
yeah,
sand on a beach.
and you know what? That makes me think, because I feel like this is a privilege that I never really I never think about this anymore when it comes to supplements. I mean, nutrition is my life. Like, it's what I learned about it is what I
Yeah.
preach. It's I think about it all the time and care a lot about it, have a decent amount of knowledge about it. So when it comes to a supplement and me trying something, I am already aware in the back of my head that I'm hitting all of these big points with my nutrition, my diet already. So I feel like I could definitely determine if this supplement is
Oh,
going
yeah.
to be working for me. I get my blood work done, I know where I'm at, I know when my sleep is off. That is I don't ever really think that is always in the back of my head. I'm good with my diet right now. It makes sense to try a supplement because I feel like I would be able to notice if it has that small additional effect to everything else I'm already doing. And sometimes I feel like I'm not aware of how much of a
Yeah.
privilege it is to be hitting all those other big points. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. But that's where it's most people whose lives aren't nutrition,
Yeah.
like, they shouldn't have to think about these things because this is how they're sold.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, if you're not a coach, a trainer, you're not responsible for having to know the science of
Yeah.
nutrition, you shouldn't have to know this. You shouldn't have to focus all of your energy, but just know that no matter how captivating a sales pitch is for a supplement, if you're not addressing what parts of your lifestyle, diet, or training are there first, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it, because it's too easy to ignore everything else going on in your life and be like, "Oh, why am I sore all the time?
Mhm.
Is it because I walk 2,000 steps a day and don't stretch and don't get enough protein? Or should I just take
Yeah.
L-glutamine or whatever the new hot soreness supplement, whatever it is?"
Yeah.
It's people rely too heavy and it can just distract. It's another short-term thinking thing. It really lines up with mistake number 5.
Yeah.
But that rounds off our list. There's a lot more ideas I wanted to put on this, but we had to constrain it to 5. But if you can manage to ignore those 5 things, if you can not make those 5 or 6 mistakes with the bonus, I think you would be shocked with how much more progress you could make over a short period of time of just a few months. If you can just not fall into those traps, if you can just not make those 5 or 6 mistakes, you would be surprised, mind blown, dare I say. Now, everybody else in premium, we'll talk to y'all this Friday for another bonus episode that we do every single week. For everybody else, we'll see y'all next Monday. If you want to join premium, get access to all those training programs, the protein downloads for little protein treats and snacks too. It's $5 a month. Sign ups in the show notes below. You know where that is. We'll see y'all over there this Friday. Ta ta.